So, hello everyone. Today I'll be talking a bit on the data side of Revit, the Revit universe. How many of you know what PowerBI is? Okay. How many of you are using PowerBI? Okay, it's going to be new then. So, what is? Oh, sorry, I just need to get this one. Okay, so what is Power BI? So it's a business analytics service by Microsoft. There's not that many people in the industry using it yet. It's mostly for people dealing with computer science and statistical analysis. Is a step forward the development from the Excel Power Query add-in. I don't know how many of you know what this is. But the Power BI makes it far easier to do the things that the Power Query in Excel was doing. You can create self-service reports with that app, and it can read from several data source types. That's one of the major strengths of it. Either you have a text file, either you have an Excel file, an HTML, SQL server, anything. You can feed that as a data source to the Power BI software, and then you model the data. I'll show you how that works in 1 minute or so. And also very important, the Power BI desktop application is free. You can download it, install it, and you can model the data. It's only if you want to share your reports with other people in the company that you pay for the service, and it can get quite pricey. So, in a nutshell, I'm going to show you how the Power BI works very rapidly, and for that I'm going to use the MRUG registration Excel file. So when you register on the website, you need to type your name, what's your role, the company, right? So you type all that data in order for us to create the registration, to print out the badges, right? So that's data that's there on the Excel file. One of the things that we use with that data is to print the badges. Which things can we use? Which things can we do with that same data set? So let's go to Kevin. Sorry, how do I get this over there? Is it maybe the function one? Yeah, it's okay. Okay, excellent. So this is the main screen for the Power BI desktop. Okay. How this works is that you, sorry, let me just mirror the screen here because duplicate. Okay. So the first step is to get the data. You click here to get the data. And as you can see, you can get the data source from all of these sources depending on where you have the data. In this case, I have an Excel file. You click connect, and then you delve to the folder where the Excel file is. I already preloaded it because it can take more time than I would like. And once you have it, you get your data in a tabular format, right? So these are the fields that you type in as you register. Not very interesting, right? But now let's use the data analytics software to get a different view at the same data. I'm not adding things here. It's the data that's already there. So the first one would be, let's start with the row. You click here and it generates a matrix. This is called a visual in Power BI speak. Just a regular matrix with all the different roles that you typed in. If there are typos, I didn't bother to correct typos or whatever, so so it's as is. But what if we change this into just a graph? So we'll be creating the role as a legend and also the role as values. It starts to be a bit more interesting, although up to here not much different than to use this in Excel, right? You can create these very easily in Excel. Now let's create the same thing with the organizations. Oh, by the way, I filtered the data query. I know there's a privacy option on the registration where you specify if you want your data to be shown on the list or not. I filtered the ones who said that you don't want to show. You're not here, okay? Just I was looking at something. Oh no! Okay, so now let's add the organization. Again, it starts with this table. Let's convert it into this one. Now up to here again, basic Excel. We can do this with all data that we have. Now when it starts to get interesting is that when you, this is what I mean by self-service reports, is if I click here on the architects, the other visual filters, and you can change the way how the filters happen. If you go to format and edit interactions, I can choose that when I select this visual, this one to filter completely. So when I click the architects, here are the architects at today's session. These are the organizations from which they came. Okay. So you can't do this in Excel. That's one of the interesting things that you can do in Power BI. You can click in different visuals and it gets you, and it filters out the data. For instance, architectural assistants, here they are. BIM managers, here they are. Well, let's add other visuals. For instance, another field that you type in is the reason for attending, right? So let's click this one. Again, not very interesting, although you'll see all the reasons there. Sir? Yeah. Now, there's another visual, which is the word cloud. Let's convert this one into the word cloud. And for ease of reading, let's just uncheck the rotate text. So the more times a particular word is typed in, the larger it gets. So you can quickly see, just by looking at exactly the same data that we use to print the badges, that most people here come to learn Revit or increase their knowledge. Now let's add another one, just a final one, because I don't want to take too long with this one, which is, where is it? Find out. How did you find out? Rotate text. So it seems that there's a lot of word of mouth going on. Hey, I've been to this MRUG venue. I've heard from a colleague. And then, if we have these, because these are all dynamically connected, okay, let's see what's a snapshot for the architects. So architects came to this session today with their main interest on learning about Revit, and they heard from it from a colleague. The architectural assistants, again, learning from a colleague. I think it's mostly to learn about Revit and to learn from a colleague. But this just to show how we can quickly, just looking at a raw data set, you can get different insights from the data that you have. This is, to my view, one of the greatest strengths of this software. Back to the presentation. Now, who's using it? So again, mostly. So I got this survey from this website here about who's using Power BI. There are, again, like Revit, you know that you have Revit, but then you have ArchiCAD and other BIM tools, right, that are used. Power BI is just one of the business analytics tools out there. And it's not the most popular, I must say. Who's using it most? Computer software, company, information technology, which you would expect. Big companies like Google, Amazon, banking, those are all using these to get more profits from their businesses. Now at the bottom you'll see construction. It's not much, but it still represents, for this survey, 4%. I did not create a slide for this, but so mostly it's companies on the US, medium-sized companies, like from 10 to 200 employees that are using Power BI. at this moment. Now, what can these types of tools represent for us, for people working in BIM, Revit, in architecture, as a business? So these tools, as you saw, the business analysis, business analytic tools, they allow us to have a different look into the eye of BIM, which is the information bit, the metadata, the data that we generate as we work, and that our models are full of it. Some models are also full of it for other things, but they're also full of information. And why? Because not just in Revit and as we work, but throughout our daily life, we leave the digital footprint. Okay, and by looking at the dark data of the digital footprint, we can create quicker analysis and generate insights. As you saw, it was very quickly for us to quickly look at the main reason why you were all here. To say that the majority of people attending here are architects or architectural assistants, just by looking at the tabular data of Excel. For the ones who are not familiar with the term of dark data is a way of calling to the data that it's there, it's accessible to everyone, but no one is doing anything with it. As we work, so at the tip of the iceberg, the visible thing, when we need to produce the deliverables, we have the sheets, the views, the schedules. These are the things that we care about as we work, because those are the things that we need to export, we need to place on our sheets. But then there are lots of things happening beneath the surface. We have syncs. People, when they're working, provided they're working on a work shared model, you need to sync. You get a timestamp, who synced and when. You get the S-log file from Revit, which tracks everything that is being done in the model. So you have the ownership, who checked out which elements, who checked in which elements. The information from the elements themselves. I'm not talking just the information that you get on the schedule, but lots of information, lots of other. The server files, which server files are being created. For instance, if you have a folder filled with final 2, final, like, this is a small job. Why do we have 10 Revit models? So that's data, the number of files in a model. Where are they saved, for instance? I don't know. If you have DWGs or RF of Revit family files, like throughout all the folders in the job folder, maybe that's not the most efficient way of having it set up. The journals as well and the job info. So the current uses. At Chapman Taylor, we are playing a bit with this tool and see what can we get out of it. So currently the more developed ones are reports, which is these things that are generated in PowerBI, that's how they're called, to do some design analysis, some clash analysis, and the BIM audit. Let me show you just some. For instance, for the design analysis, this is not in a very good state. So basically, what you have here. So, okay, for you, it was clear the concept of having the Excel file with the MRUG data and feeding it into PowerBI, right? You know Dynamo, right? You know that you can export stuff from Dynamo to an Excel file. So here, what I was playing with. So okay, so people place rooms throughout the model with areas. They might have design options. They might have different phases. So throughout, by using a Dynamo script that picks up on all rooms placed in all rooms in the model, placed or unplaced, all areas placed or unplaced, bounded or unbounded. That's why you have these here like errors. This one found 12 errors and 11 rooms in the model that contains. So it might be duplicate, overlapping rooms, unbounded rooms, which these might very easily not be showing on the schedule if they were filtered out, but they may have a consequence if you're trying to measure some areas. So the Dynamo just exports every data from each of these Revit elements to an Excel file. and then the Excel file gets loaded into the Power BI, and then you create these visuals. So, for instance, if you want to check at quickly the GIA NIA calculation, which you can't really do in Revit, at least very easily. So it just dumps the data, reads the area from all. In this case, the rooms are measuring the GIA, the NIA, and the GIA are just areas. So it calculates everything and calculates the efficiency. This is a very efficient job because it has an efficiency of 119%. Okay, this might raise a red flag that maybe we forgot to either add some rooms or to delete some areas. Okay, something that you would not easily see just by looking at Revit. And again, with all the dynamics that, for instance, if you just click here, everything updates based on the visual that you create. If you have multiple blocks, you select the blocks that you want to get the data from, or the uses, which could be the department, whatever. So once you have the data loaded in Power BI, just a matter of checking which are the things that you want to use for your visuals. The other one is the that I want to show you is somewhere here. It's the audit. Okay, so this is still also in progress. How can this be used to generate an audit? So again, we have an add-in that just creates detached copies of the Revit files that we want to audit. It collects the data, pushes them into multiple text files, and then all the text files are loaded into Power BI, and then you create measures, or you need to model the data with the sort of criteria to color code them if they're red, amber, and green. This is the main page where you have a general grading for amber, and then each of the different areas that we're looking at. You can look at stuff like from the warnings, the warnings in Revit. If you just export the HTML, you have a long list of different warnings. We model the data so that we are grouping the warnings based on the categories that we feel that are more relevant to us. So, for instance, rooms and areas. If I click this one, room tag outside of room is not properly enclosed, multiple rooms are in the same region. So it just groups the different types of warnings into main categories so that the team could look at this and say, okay, we need to sort out all the warnings involving the rooms or whatever. And the one at the top tells you how many warnings are in each of the models. And similarly, you can just click one of the models and filters out how many warnings of each type are in each model. We added another one, which is for the clashes. Personally, I think that Navisworks, it's a good tool to create a clash test, but for clash management, it's awful. I know you can group clash tests together, but trying to sort out which clashes actually do I have, it can be very frustrating. I know we can create search sets. Okay, I want to see if there are doors clashing with floors, but if the doors are not using the correct category, or the floors are, I don't know, are in place generic models for some reason, that those will not be picked up. So this one, to create this report, we created the clash test in Navisworks. We exported the reports in the HTML format, right? You know that you can export those clashes. We load the HTMLs into the Power BI. We model it so that we can create these visuals. We have a slider here for the tolerance. So if I want to look at larger clashes, I just move the slider. Now I'm looking at clashes between 0.84 and 1.85 meters. Because you have on the clash test, you have the grid location. If I want to look how many clashes do I have in this particular location, you just click and everything updates. You can also filter. Well, the other good thing is that because I'm exporting the HTMLs with every single clash and reading which category is in which category is the element that is generating the clash. I don't bother to create clash search sets. I just go here and say if I want to look which doors, or if I have doors clashing with floors, this is where they are. Well, that sort of thing. No. Obviously, there are more people using PowerBI with architecture. They are also doing design analysis. One very interesting using the fun fractal fractal project, in which they use Project Fractal to generate the million variances depending on the parameters, and then fed those into Power BI just by checking boxes like, well, I want my building to be from 10 to 15 meters, and then the other visual, say with the number of rooms or with the different areas, would update and say, well, actually I want these rooms and those, and then by choosing the different options they would be narrowing the number of design options. Also some interesting things done with issues reporting, either connecting directly to BIM-Track for coordination, and also kinship, which is also doing similar things, in which as you work, I don't know how many of you know kinship, the Revit add-in. Okay, so it's an add-in that you install on the in Revit, and it frequently pushes data to the cloud, to a database. Things like which Revit build are people, which Revit build do people have, the ones which are working, because sometimes if they are on the first customer ship, it's usually not that great, so it might crash. So if the models are crashing a lot, you can quickly identify who does not have the correct build, how many times people are syncing, who loaded which families to which models and where, if there are frequently used families from all the library, this sort of thing. Now, other uses. By connecting this to that dark data thing, these three visuals are accessible. It looks like a sales pitch. These three visuals are accessible to you right this moment. So what are they? So you know, when you sync, you get a timestamp like this user synced in this time of day. You know that you can export that to a text file, right? This is basically exporting the text file, loading it into Power BI. Each color is a different user. You could, why could that be important? I don't know. I don't know, but I may have a couple of ideas. For instance, it could give us on team dynamics. How frequently is the team changing, of people coming and going? We know that if I'm the only guy working in a model, things are more consistent. I'm the only guy. I'm deciding how things get modeled and where. If I have a team with 10 people, it's more likely that the models can become tricky. So, for instance, for these, so each of these graphs is for one different model. You could see that the one at the top the team was fairly consistent throughout the 3 months of syncing. Oh, okay. This one had a shift. Okay, so the team was fairly consistent, and then throughout March something happened so that different people started to work in the same file. Why is this important? I don't know, but it's hinting to something. Also on training, if you have a way of measuring how confident people are with modeling in Revit, if you have a way of measuring that, I know that some companies do, they assign a grade, they have people doing some tests, they assign the grade, so these are higher grade than others, or the performance of the team as a whole. If you collate all this data, you can start measuring if, okay, this team may need a bit of assistance. Okay, because users, they're too busy, they'll likely don't come to you. Now the challenges to take this. So it's another software. There's other languages, programming languages involved, very similar to Excel, some. It's DAX and M. The data sources, like picking the correct data sources, is key. They need to be reliable and consistent. Otherwise, things will just start to fall apart. It still lacks a direct link to Revit. Okay. So you can export things to Excel, to text files, but it's a bit cumbersome. Ideally, you don't have a live link. As people work, you can open PowerBI. What is happening currently? There's also the topic about privacy and transparency. Okay, so if I'm syncing my name and this date, is that private to me, or does it belong to the company? So there's a bit of sensibility of which things are you going to collect and model. And then the price for the paid version, which I think can be like 4,000 quid a month. Yeah, so that could be a bit pricey. I ran my time. You have a question? Yeah, sure. Does anyone have questions?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Oh, okay. Yes.
Have you used it to analyze any data from Revit? So I'm using Busy.
Sorry, if I
Have
use
you used it to analyze any data from Revit itself, so the mesh data? So for example, UniCast or elements, and just pulling it out to validate what's in the models?
to validate. Well,
Yeah.
the BIM audits are trying to do a bit of that.
Because I'm currently in the process of doing that, so I'm just wondering if it's already been done, so just trying to understand where it's at in terms of our industry, whether it's already been done, and if there's guidance and stuff out there.
Well, the BIM audit report that we're creating, it's still under development. I try to run it in different models,
Yeah.
just to keep track of, oh, wait a minute, this doesn't look correctly, so I need to sort out and fix it. But it could be a quick way. I know that Kevin is also has some BIM auditing capabilities with the Power BI, so we don't have a robust tool yet, but it's getting there. It's far better than it was a couple of months ago. Yeah.